Ladies and gentlemen, soccer fans here in St. Louis and around the world, hola, and welcome to another episode of Atleticotv. In fact, our 10th episode of our new show. I'm one of the hosts here, Josh Meade, joined as always by our coaches, Ricky Garza and Luis Swisher. Excited to bring you another soccer episode this week. Got a lot to talk about, of course, of the events of just this past week alone, but we're going to try to cover soccer here around the world today. And of course, guys, we're going to start off, let's just get right into it. With this week from U.S. soccer, there was a lot going on, a lot to discuss. Obviously, emotions are running high on several different levels. But let's start off with the positive, and that would be that the U.S. men's national team competed in a couple of friendlies over this past week. Started off with a 4-1 victory over fellow CONCACAF opponent Jamaica last Thursday, and then yesterday on Sunday, the U.S. faced European opposition, and I believe they won for the first time in quite some time, maybe since 2015. They beat Northern Ireland 2-1. A lot of people got on the score sheet this week over these two matches. You had Christian Pulisic, you had Gio Reyna, you had Serginho Dest score a really nice goal in the Jamaica match, and there was a lot of positivity. There was some experimentation. The U.S. and head coach Greg Berhalter decided to experiment with a 3-4-3 type of wingback formation for the very first time. I can't remember ever a U.S. side trying out a wingback formation just because we haven't had the personnel to do that. And it was interesting. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad enough to where they could just, trash it. I think that's something to hold on to maybe for the future and maybe to develop. And there were a lot of good individual performances out there as well. I would say a couple guys that struck me were Brendan Aronson and Daryl Dike, a couple guys who have made the jump from MLS to Europe and have done quite well since then, and they showcased their skills here in these matches. So, again, a lot of positivity, I thought. I don't know if you guys saw any of those matches, but I thought overall, in terms of that side of the U.S., things looked pretty good from this past week. What did you guys think?
Well, I saw pieces of the Jamaica game and also pieces of the North Ireland game. There's a lot of I think the senior national team now. It's there's a lot of positives and a lot of in terms of results lately. Having in the last matches a lot of goals. Obviously, the opponents are a little bit different, but it's always good, and that's what fans want. You always want to win. But I also think that they've been playing good. So obviously, last game versus North Ireland, seeing guys. Which now that comes to the other frustrating part, right? Where you have a really young squad on the senior national team, and you have 5 or 6 of those guys that could be on the Olympics squad, and at the end, the probably the frustration comes to not being able to use those guys. But I think the U.S. has the quality to create 2-3 rosters, which they have been doing. Unfortunately, the squad of the Olympics, didn't work out. But I think what it is with the senior national team, there's a lot of positives there, and like you say, interesting to see quiet for a while a different formation and system in the way that they did versus Ireland. Obviously comes from the characteristics of the plays that they were on the field, but I thought that was positive, and they keep improving. I think based on what we saw from the non-qualification to the World Cup till this day, I think shaky at the beginning, but then it kind of built a momentum and looks positive for the future, regardless, in my opinion, of what happened with the Olympic squad.
All right, let's get into that because I know Ricky's been dying to talk about this. But obviously, yesterday, after the U.S. beat Northern Ireland, we had one more match to go, and that would be the U.S. under-23s versus Honduras with an opportunity to qualify for this summer's Olympics. The U.S. had not done it in 2 straight attempts, and we're looking to change things here. Obviously, not coming off of a great match versus Mexico, and unfortunately, same thing happens here again. The U.S. failed to qualify. They lose 2-1 to Honduras. I mean, just on the goals alone, there were some really bad mistakes. Obviously, the goalkeeper Ochoa on the second goal was just a nightmare. And then Jackson Ewell had that excellent strike to get them back in it, but they don't finish the job. It's now 3 straight attempts that the U.S. under-23s, the men's at least, failed to qualify for the Olympics. That's 4 out of the past 5. that just the disturbing trend continues in terms of not qualifying for this tournament. Obviously, like Luis mentioned, there were a few guys people were mad about that could have been on this team, whether they be playing with the U.S. men's national team. I know certain MLS clubs did not release certain guys because of the season coming up. But, I mean, let's start. You can either start with the match itself, Ricky, because there's a lot of bad stuff to get from there, or just overall from this experience. What stuck out to you? You basically talked a little bit about, on last week's episode, Jason Kreis and what he's been doing, and here it looked as though, once again, his side was exposed.
Yeah, well, before we get started, Key, get the censor bleep button ready because this isn't going to be good. Where are our priorities is the first question, because when you look at, look at Mexico, look at Germany, look at Brazil, the top teams try to play in every tournament that there is. Like Taylor Twellman said over the weekend, I thought was a great point that he had made, is that they take the priority, every tournament they want to get in and they want to win. And looking at where we are, like Luis mentioned, we've got top young players that could have been participating within that Olympics instead of playing in a game that they probably didn't need. And we needed them because when you'll see in the coaches breakdown later, we could have scraped out with the tie against Mexico without giving up a horrible mistake, just giving the ball away. And you'll see that in the coaches breakdown. Maybe we get a point there and pull a couple points back from Mexico. And we just aren't dangerous getting forward, and you see that only scoring one goal in the game yesterday. A part of that is the level that, yes, we have a deeper group, like Luis said, we can make more teams, but why not pull at least a couple studs from that first team and give them the experience since we're going to need them for the World Cup? Am I right or am I wrong? Like Luis, aren't we going to be utilizing the players that are on this Olympic roster, and some of them will be coming up into the World Cup? Have that chemistry, have that momentum to get into the Olympics and be a contender there so we're ready for the next tournament, which is the World Cup. That's where I'm at with this. Where's the strategy? Where's the priorities at? Especially with, like you said, we've not qualified, twice now. So this is the third now, right?
This is third straight.
So, I mean, come on. I don't like the priority side of it. I think that we missed an opportunity. Even if we would have lost and not done so well in the first team, but qualified for the Olympics, I think everybody would have understood that and be like, this is good, this is still fine. Instead, it's flipped.
Mm-hmm. And I think just, the thing that stuck out to me this tournament is, well, number one, like you said, where are our priorities? It's not with the Olympics. Let's just be honest. This is not our best foot forward, and it hasn't been for quite some time. I don't know where the disconnect is because, with the women's team, it's a huge deal, and they get it done, and they at least get to the Olympics, The men's team, we have not seen the past few attempts, a real recognizable, roster of guys that are going to be going there. Now, in terms of complications, because, it's an August tournament and season's coming up, I don't know the politics behind all that. That's a lot to get through. But in terms of the side, you're talking about how many of these guys are going to be connected to the U.S. team going forward. In my opinion, I want to be too harsh. I know that we're developing some of these players. I counted maybe one or two. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jackson Yule, I think, can definitely make it. It's not just based off the goal. What he does well is in the midfield, breaking up plays, possession, things like that. And maybe a couple other guys. Otherwise, this was a collection of guys that, they're trying to continue to develop and just give them some high-level experience. But if you want to qualify, that's not who should be out there.
Yeah.
And I think what was exposed this week is the real disconnect still between the U.S. Soccer Federation, between MLS, and between the youth national system, because there's no coordination in terms of what do we need to emphasize here at this point in time, what's going to work for us going forward, what's not. How can we figure this all out to where everybody is happy with this situation? Because it feels as though all three sides just went their separate ways here, which is what led to the youth national team suffering. You have these MLS players who could really use this experience. I know they're getting ready for their season, but you're risking injury whether you're in a preseason training session or you're out on the pitch. It doesn't matter either way. And the U.S. men's national team, again, it could be argued that these friendlies, at least for some of these guys, did not really matter, and they could have used their services elsewhere. But yeah, it's just the disconnect, I think, was pretty evident to me.
Did you see
this past week.
And then did you see the post game of Jason Kreis on I think it was the Mexico game? Either of you see his excuse of like he was happy with his team. He's like, someone asked a question about tactics or something. He's like, well, we're trying new things. We're trying to keep the ball. We're trying to be creative. We're trying to do all these things. And I was happy that we got into the final third. We got into that space. We got into there. But, we aren't finishing. Like, the standard is much higher than just getting into the final third, because quality teams can defend in their defensive third and then be comfortable there. They'll let you in to counter you. So the standard's not there, and we already went on a rant last episode about Jason Christ. Is he the right guy for that? I just think that's one of the most crucial parts. U23 is an important role for our coaches, and I hate seeing our leader of that just say, I'm glad with us getting into the final third.
Yeah, I think that this is obviously an indictment, and I'm going to hazard a guess as to say he may not be in that role for long, if not, for the next few weeks or so.
Yeah.
But
I say now on the show, Luis should be the coach of the U23. You should
there you go.
Get over there. Yeah.
Set that application up. But basically, I think that it's from both sides, right? Coaching and tactics were bad, but again, and people are saying, well, these are youth players. You shouldn't be criticizing. Under 23 is the next step, okay? David Ochoa should not be doing whatever he was doing at the back that led to that second goal. That gets knocked out, at very, very youth level. It's just some of the mistakes and the energy and the intensity. Again, this is your opportunity to showcase yourself for the U.S., okay? Some of them have already even played for the U.S. men's national team, the first team this year, in some of those earlier friendlies. I know like Sebastian Soto and some of these other guys have featured at the senior national level. So they should have the experience. They really don't have any type of excuse in terms of the stage or what they should be doing. So I think that's just the shock. And also that in terms of that not qualifying for the past World Cup, you would have hoped that that would seep into every level of U.S. soccer, that this type of stuff should not be happening, whether it's the World Cup, the Gold Cup, or here in the Olympics, at whatever level. We should not be having these types of mess-ups, and we're still here doing this right now. So it was a step back. And in terms of going forward, Luis, I don't know what you think, but in terms of development and in terms of improvement, where they go from here, because obviously it's going to be a long wait to the next opportunity for the Olympics, but momentum-wise for U.S. soccer, it's not very good that this is where we finished. You had these nice two little friendlies, but this will stick in people's minds more so than those.
I'm going to be the positive guy today here.
All right.
To put balance here. I think there is, because we are involved in the system of developing players, I think I just felt that we were not prepared because we knew that those guys were not going to get, I agree, the top players should be playing this type of, if this goes more into the timing and the administration work behind the scenes of, these players are not going to be released, we can't count with them. I think now U.S. has the ability to have a second tier, third tier of players that they still can compete. So, and I think the federation knows that. But I just felt, this is just my opinion, I felt that we underestimate Honduras, we underestimate Costa Rica. So we're good because we're doing good things. We think that it's going to work all the time. So I just felt, I would say, a little bit cocky in the way that the approach, probably, because they are good players, for sure. And in the other side, what happened if U.S. qualified? Then I think it will be, okay, we qualify, we're a third string team or a second team, whatever it is. So it's a different way and perspective of seeing. We can still do this without our best players because we knew. So the timing of the things that they did, with administration, paperwork, and anything else, because if we go, Mexico was with their best players, some of their best players. Of course, they're not in Europe, and the rules are different, but they did approach this with a different way. Is it timing? Is it, we got this and we can do it with our fourth, fifth, whatever, and I think we can because based on our massive population, based on the way that soccer is growing here in the U.S., which is I'm impressed in the past 10 years, because if I go back, I did play this tournament in 2000 versus U.S. In fact, Guatemala got disqualified because of the U.S. We were competing versus the best. I didn't go to the Olympics because of U.S., but the Donovans were there. The Wolf, the Marco Beasley, the Tim Howards, all the names that, like you say, eventually they will be in the future, they were in that game. But if I remember, there was not a third string fourth string for now players. So soccer has changed so much. So let's look at positive. We can still do that, right, with the third and fourth string, but we need to be more prepared even with those type of players, because I think they could have qualified, but it was just, I'm not there, but the circumstances, I felt the team wasn't as great in terms of competitiveness. In terms, I was watching a game yesterday versus Honduras, and since the start of the game, nervous, and that's not the characteristics of when we face those teams. It should be the opposite. Honduras should be the ones that were scared at some point of scenic of this.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point going forward, is that the reason why people are upset is because they definitely believe at this point that this team that they put out yesterday should have the quality enough to beat Honduras in this type of situation. That U.S. has developed forward to where we don't need to put out a top-tier roster in this type of competition, that we need to put out a roster that we can develop and who can continue to move on in the future and compete. But it's just in terms of the overall progress of U.S. soccer going forward, maybe it doesn't have as big an impact as it is as people are getting upset about, but still, it's something that, we want not to keep happening, and this keeps happening, unfortunately, going forward. So it was a big week for U.S. soccer, but there was also a lot of other soccer going on. Our coaches are going to break down how the youth team got to that situation versus Honduras. Again, they're going to have another great community segment, and then we're going to catch up with a little bit more of the other important soccer matches going on during the international break. So let's get into it. Okay, it's time for our coaches breakdown segment for this week. Our coaches will be breaking down from last Wednesday the Olympic qualifying match between the U.S. under-23s and the Mexico under-23s. Now, both teams had won their first two matches in this group, so they already safely through to the semifinal round, but this match would determine who their opponents would be. And as we saw with the U.S. versus Honduras, it ended up being a very important match. Our coaches are going to help break down and show what the U.S. struggled to do in this match. Mexico were able to do well enough to get the full 3 points and to win Group A. Coaches, take it away.
Bienvenidos to the coaches breakdown. In the game today is USA versus Mexico in the Olympic qualifiers. Vámonos, let's get into it. Formación 4-3-3. They both played in a 4-3-3. And in this clip right now, México obligado a Estados Unidos a cometer errores. Luis.
Sí, aquí miramos cómo está la formación del equipo de Estados Unidos y miramos pues que está en una formación de 4 en línea. México pues tratando de hacer una presión en la salida, en la zona baja de Estados Unidos, y teniendo la oportunidad pues de tener en el momento de la transición con mucha movilidad en el frente de jugadores como Antuna, y tratando pues de explotar inmediatamente la recuperación del balón. Aquí miramos cómo en esa acción nuevamente tenemos México, Ricky.
Cuando México presionó a Estados Unidos, puso y muchos jugadores adelante.
Sí, definitivamente muy organizados, una presión alta, sabiendo que Estados Unidos sale con construcción de juego y tapándole las salidas, bloqueándole los pases de línea y poniendo pues en aprietos al arquero, en este caso al arquero de Estados Unidos. Súper organizados, tratando de negarle la progresión. Estados Unidos tratando la manera de buscar conectar y encontrar ese hombre libre. En momentos le fue difícil por la alta presión que México le puso. En esta situación miramos cómo Estados Unidos trata de circular el balón, pero aún así encontrando los espacios, los espacios vacíos y espacios en medio donde puede encontrar ese hombre libre, pero siempre tapándole la línea a los mexicanos y haciéndole una especie de trampa para poder pues denegar que pudieran seguir progresando, siempre manteniendo la pelota por detrás, los de Estados Unidos y los mexicanos pues tratando la manera de estar bien organizados y mantener esa presión fuerte que fue lo que los caracterizó en este juego, donde aquí miramos pues que estos trampas que hacen en el medio hacen que Estados Unidos cometa errores. No los dejan salir, recuperan la pelota, ahí pues la pierden y nuevamente Estados Unidos la tiene otra vez. Con solo que se mantengan en esta zona, para ellos es más que importante. Y bueno, Ricky, Estados Unidos tratando de salir del bloque bajo.
Sí, de nuevo en la misma fase de presión, México le quitó medio espacio y fuerza la rotación.
Le hace la manera de que ahora juegue con el volante de contención y nuevamente aplican la presión para poder tratar la manera de no dejarlo salir. En esta vuelven a intentar, cortan el pase, muy organizados los mexicanos y que tienen esa movilidad, aunque no eran muy eficientes a la hora de recuperar el balón.
Estados Unidos encontró oportunidades para romper la presión de México.
Sí, definitivamente trataban de buscar ese espacio y esos hombres libres, tratando de recuperar la pelota a los mexicanos, pero tratando de mantener el orden. Y la única manera es saltando una línea y buscando en el espacio atrás de la presión de los mexicanos en el medio campo, y que eso les obligaba pues ya a tener espacios más libres detrás de la línea defensiva de México. Y bueno, la velocidad con que Estados Unidos aplicaba y trataba de llegar no era tan eficiente, pero al final lograron, como mirábamos acá, lograron salir de una situación.
Estados Unidos hizo un buen trabajo de presión, pero devolvió el balón rápidamente.
Sí, ese era el problema, diferente a los mexicanos, ¿verdad? Pero queriendo hacer lo mismo, queriendo hacer también una presión. Al final, ahora en el fútbol moderno queremos recuperar la pelota lo más arriba posible y no en nuestro campo. Los de Estados Unidos tratando de intentar eso. En ocasiones lo lograban como esta, al igual que los mexicanos, pero la transición de Estados Unidos no era la mejor. En esta lo logran agarrar, tratando de poner esa superioridad en ataque. Aquí en prácticamente un 4 contra 2, 3 recuperando y uno de Estados Unidos, pero no eran tan eficientes a la hora de tener esas opciones y pues desperdiciaban. Los mexicanos se recuperaban y nuevamente empezaba la nueva acción.
Sí, y México respetó la presión de Estados Unidos y decidió ir directo a los delanteros.
Sí, en una presión más alta, obviamente los espacios están, para la gente que nos mira, los espacios están detrás, ¿verdad? Y eso era lo que, yendo un poco más directo, los hace estar en una superioridad o en una igualdad de números para poder seguir penetrando. La verdad que México tuvo mejor control y mejor visión en el sentido de encontrar los espacios y en estas ocasiones pues ya están en campo el rival y eso le ayudaba a México a controlar mejor el partido, cosa que a Estados Unidos le costó más, porque creo que la presión de México fue mucho mejor que la de Estados Unidos. En esta acción miramos cómo acá recuperan y en el momento de transición lo que tiene México pone muchos nombres y muchos hombres alrededor y recuperan la pelota con una presión inmediata y obligan a Estados Unidos a cometer muchos errores. Aquí miramos otra, Ricky.
Sí, Estados Unidos siguieron atacó por el lado del izquierdo, pero México contraatacó en el diagonal rápidamente.
Sí, era una manera de buscar romper ese bloque defensivo de la primera fase y lo empezaron a hacer a través de trazos más largos. Aquí como miramos el central trata de meterse al momento de no encontrar, pues salir inmediatamente y buscar un trazo diagonal que le permita salir. En esta jugada pues trataron de salir por el lado izquierdo, no lo pudieron conseguir y México sí lo hacía de mejor forma de lo que Estados Unidos lo debería haber hecho por los momentos de trampas que le puso en ciertos sectores. Aquí como miramos salen circulando el balón y pudiendo ser una amenaza porque son jugadores muy rápidos los mexicanos. Aquí tenemos otra acción. La presión, si miramos, es tan diferente porque no va tan sincronizada como lo hicieron los mexicanos.
Sí, aquí hay otro clip de un ataque largo en el diagonal por parte de México.
Miramos cómo rompen la primera línea en base a los apoyos de México, ¿verdad? Pero la sincronización de las otras líneas ya crearon el espacio y tienen mucho espacio para ir hacia el frente y buscando ahora el pase diagonal que les permite estar a la defensa de Estados Unidos desbalanceada. Pero creo que fue algo que utilizaron mucho porque creo que la diferencia entre México y Estados Unidos, que no eran tan organizados defensivamente como lo era México en su ataque. Y aquí encontramos un ataque peligroso de México por esa situación. Y aquí vamos a ver a México, ¿verdad? Diferente en la organización de su defensa, creando y cerrando esos espacios.
Sí, la táctica de México para negar el medio espacio obliga a Estados Unidos a cometer errores.
Muchos errores durante el juego, Ricky, muchos errores por la manera en su presión. La única manera de Estados Unidos era buscar una línea más arriba, cosa que no pudieron conseguir y mantuvieron la pelota acá. Pero una vez intentaban entrar, los ataques eran súper organizados, siempre buscando la presión y cobertura dentro de las áreas, en esas trampas que obligaba obviamente a México a recuperar la pelota. Aquí miramos en esta, siempre evaluando el posible receptor y poder interceptar esos balones que le permiten recuperar la pelota. Ahí encuentra el balón. Y es más, creo que aquí sale el gol. Esta es la jugada del gol en donde los de Estados Unidos estaban mal parados defensivamente y Antuna, que es un buen jugador, encuentra el espacio y pues con un buen tiro define y termina la acción.
Golazo, golazo.
Lo mismo, evaluando, lo único que les quedaba era jugar para atrás y cada vez que la pelota iba hacia atrás, los mexicanos era donde encontraban y se agrupaban para encontrar la presión y en transición pues eran muy rápidos y muy verticales, que es algo que caracteriza a México y por su movilidad. Y aquí miramos cómo encuentra pues un muy buen gol de parte de Antuna, que por cierto anotó contra Canadá. Eso es todo, amigos, y espero lo hayan disfrutado, Ricky.
Sí, y gracias. Bienvenidos to the segment of the community segment here on Atletico TV. I'm very happy and pleased to welcome Lindy Drew, the co-founder of Humans of St. Louis. Humans of St. Louis, in my experience and understanding the organization and speaking with Lindy and then seeing the work, you find humans here in St. Louis that are special or are doing something that is great for our city. People that honestly you wouldn't see on the news, you wouldn't see these stories on traditional media, and you find them, seek them out, give them this platform, and allow the city of St. Louis to look at the good in what's going on and around town. And because of that and what you have done, we are excited to have you on our most special episode of the year, which is our 10-year anniversary episode. Congratulations, Luis, 10 episodes. We're still here. We're not fired. And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ricky. Thanks for having me, Luis.
So for our viewers who may not know about Humans of St. Louis, what would you like to, how would you explain a little bit more and better than what I explained just now?
That was actually a great intro. So a couple years ago, some friends and I got together out of school and we decided to kind of roam the streets and meet strangers and take pictures. And now we're like 7 years deep into the project. COVID's completely changed everything. Usually we walk up to people if it looks like they have the time of day and they're welcome to have an interview and get their photo taken, spend some time telling their story to me. Then we just do it on the side of the street, on the sidewalk, on a porch or whatnot. COVID's a little bit different now, so we'll do some interviews over Zoom and, ask people to send us their own photos. But the premise still works. The idea of Humans in St. Louis is you're having a one-on-one conversation with a stranger, and you get to learn a little bit about their story. You get to listen, ask some follow-up questions, and then craft that story together for a wider audience to see. And we end up telling stories unknowingly about whatever topic the person wants to bring up. So interestingly enough, the way that you and I met is because somebody recommended that we interview you around the time of the election last year and the census. We had never done a story before about the census, and it only comes around every now and then. So it's fascinating to be able to not just tell the story about a topic, but also learn more about how that person is connected to the topic. And then when the audience ends up seeing it, they get into these rich conversations, or they're able to give advice or link to other sources in the city, so people are more connected to.
Yeah, and that was a really cool experience that I had is you reading about the stories that just happened the week before, and then seeing on the chat and the comments people connecting, and then it was our turn to go around, and then so much people went to our site, signed up for volunteer, and knew about who we were. And so I like that it's a different platform for people that could have any walk of life, anything going on in their life, and then I feel like they're just attracted to it. And once you go to Humans of St. Louis's platform, social media, website, you're hooked at that point. Right? So then you get to, get the good in our city and things like that.
It's funny that that's the point where you talk about being hooked, because I'm hooked the second I meet the person. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know who I'm going to talk to that day when I go out on the street with my bike or my camera usually. And then all of a sudden you're having this intimate conversation with a stranger, because the idea is you just roll out the red carpet for them to be heard and to be seen. What's interesting to me is, like, we finish the interview sometimes, me and other storytellers that I'll work with, and the person will say, "Thank you so much for asking me these questions. I didn't know I wanted to talk about this," or "I didn't realize I should maybe talk to a counselor, or catch up with my mom and dad, or go deeper with this, topic that's been on my mind with my son or my daughter." And now with COVID, everyone's been experiencing something similar but different. And they're just blasting their stories on social media, looking for, a way to reach out for connection. And that's what we were doing regardless.
I was going to ask, now that you just pop on my head about, the stories, what would you say, lately, of one of, can you tell the most unique or the wildest story, or something, a piece of something that was because I can imagine all the different stories that you can take from random topics, but what will be the one that you will say, and I don't know, you don't want to hurt any feelings, but something that will say, that one really, shocked me or grabbed my attention or, make me think about things.
So we've done over 3,000 stories so far. Mm-hmm. It's just a lot in my head for how much I've heard, I think the stories that always get my attention, especially right now, especially since I got to St. Louis in 2014, have been the stories about equity, the stories about how people are treated or about how they're not treated appropriately. Mm-hmm. I kind of show up to the interview as who I am, where I come from, what I look like, and then I end up meeting someone who has all these different identities as me. And they start laying out, well, here's what life is like for me from when I was young. Here's what life is like me, what life has been like for me at work or at school or in public transportation, when I traveled, how I've grown my family. And it's just been surprising to see how other people live, how other people are treated. So any time that there's an opportunity to listen to that and not just get a cliche answer, but something that's deeper about, what they think their experience was and they can share with the public, that to me has been the most powerful. And then we end up putting it online and everybody starts jumping into the conversation too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'll explain one. One comes to mind actually, Luis, right now as I'm talking through it. There's a Black gentleman that I met who works in the school district out in the county. He grew up in St. Louis his whole life. And he went to school out in the county because he was bused out in the county for a while. He remembers spending the night at a white friend's house, and it was the first time he ever did. And his family was like, his mother said, "I'm not going to let you spend the night there." She came from the South. She knows how things have been in the news and whatnot, just in general. She's like, "I'm not ready for that." He'd ask and ask and ask, and eventually he did. And he had a great experience. And so did the white child and family whose house he spent the night at. The kid goes to school the next day, and all his friends swarm around him like, what was it like? And he's like, we're friends. What do you mean? It was a sleepover between two kids in 6th grade or whatever. And just thinking about that and wrapping it around your head, it makes me think, when did I spend the night at friends' houses, when I was that age? Or hopefully when other people are reading it, they're thinking about that too for their children or their past experiences. So I find that, just finding out a little bit about someone's lived experience that only they've had, they want to talk about, that's where the power is in the storytelling. With a sharp intro, a real meaty middle, and then an ending where people can jump in. And those stories about race, about skin color, about how we're treated, about how we treat others, they're important right now. And they're important in a city like this and with what's going on just globally. So any chance there is to be able to create more opportunities for people to then read the story as it comes up in their feed and then have a dinner conversation or have a talk with their friends. That's what we're finding the point is in this platform.
The entire process is a beautiful infrastructure because you're a stranger on the street, don't know you take their photo, and that's the other thing is they're beautiful photos that you're taking that high level professional, and now they get to see them in that persona, and I think that's really cool. So when you go to see the content, it's a very high level content, and they feel special, I'm sure, when they see that photo. Now they have that photo forever, and it's a reminder of their story, and it's a reminder of other people, and that sort of thing. Your foundation at your work, at your foundation, nonprofit, is growing. You have a lot of people now that are helping you run it. You want to talk about them at all?
Yeah. Thanks for recognizing the photography, for example. It's a huge part of the work that I do, and I really appreciate that part of the conversation and then capturing it and sending it to people. So we've grown from 2 people to a board of 6. We're a nonprofit as of 2016. We have 4 other storytellers, and we have 1 intern in high school right now. It fluctuates all the time. We're also working on our first book for the past 3 years. So we're self-publishing, and it's coming out this year. Hopefully in the summer, maybe at the end of summer, maybe at the beginning of fall. But that's been a labor of love, and we decided that we wanted to make it 100% local. So everybody we hired for the book is from here. So the money stays here, the talent stays here, the people who are making it are using, their eyes and experiences to build this thing too as we craft the design and the structure and everything. So there's about 25 people that have made up the book team. It fluctuates, it comes and goes based on what we've needed. But yeah, it's grown a lot. And then we have a handful of volunteers, and the volunteers help out with the editing. So we always have multiple eyes that are on the storytelling, multiple eyes behind the scenes to be able to, answer the audience or deal with what a need is that arises to get a viewer connected to what they're looking for also within the story or the person we highlight.
So then now, where can they find you? Where can they find the book? Where can they find your social media? We want all of our supporters to start supporting you now. So tell them. I
really appreciate it. So the best way to find us is on Facebook. We also share the stories on Instagram. And to get the book, you can go to our website. So it's humansofstl.org.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being a part of the St. Louis community. It's what we need right now at these times. So just want to thank you for everything that you do.
I appreciate you guys having me today. Thanks so much.
And we'll get back to Atleticotv right after this.
Okay, we're going to wrap up the show today talking a little bit about some of the other matches that have been going on during this international break. It's a very exciting time because World Cup qualifiers have started across all the other different continents, and there have been some very exciting matches been going on. But we're going to focus today on UEFA because obviously that's where most of the top clubs in the world have been competing, also because unfortunately South America are not having their World Cup qualifiers right now due to the ongoing pandemic. They're going to have to reschedule some of those matches going forward. So I want to focus on UEFA just a little bit here. And there was a really big, controversy from this past week. I don't know if you guys saw this. This was in the Serbia-Portugal match. The match finished in a 2-2 draw. It was very competitive and came down to the final minute in stoppage time. It looked as though Cristiano Ronaldo had scored the match winner. It looked as though on replays that the ball had gone over the line. But unfortunately for right now, in this competition, there is no VAR. There is no goal line technology. So despite the protests, the officials did not give it. and the match finished in a 2-2 draw. And I can't believe at this stage still we're having this level of competition where we don't have VAR, we don't have goal line technology, because this is it, right? If you're going to have a backup system, this is the highest level of competition in the world. Forget club soccer. It's World Cup. It's World Cup qualifying. And for that to not happen here, I mean, Ronaldo, he stormed off. He threw down the captain's armband in terms of the behavior. I know he's getting a lot of flack for that, but it seemed justified, in my opinion, for him to be upset because the goal did not count and it looked like it should have. So that was kind of the big takeaway for me. Elsewhere, it was our first chance really to get to see some of these other big clubs, England, Italy, Germany, Spain, France, see what type of guys they're thinking about maybe for this potential competition. And obviously they've got the Euros to focus on in a couple months' time here. But they got off to some good starts. I think it was England, Italy, and Germany who won their first 2 matches and kept a clean sheet in all of them. So they looked very impressive. France, Spain, Netherlands, they were held in their first match. I know the Netherlands got beat by Turkey pretty bad, but then won their second match. I don't know if any results caught your guys' eye over this past week, but it's the first few matches, so obviously still some time for teams to get into this competition, but it was our first opportunity. Is there anything that kind of caught your guys' eye, or in terms of countries that you guys usually follow, is there anything that stood out?
For me, it was the game versus Spain versus Georgia. They were down the score 1-0. They flip it over in last minute, 2-1. Luis Enrique was super excited about that one because it could be a bad turnover for him. But that tells you, how everything it's getting closer and closer between the competition. There's no easy team now, and in a modern football. I think even now in CONCACAF, everything it's getting, at the end. It's good for soccer because it gives a different challenge. So that's why there's always involvement. What we as coaches are evolving because the distance are getting narrow and narrow and narrow. So good matches around. I thought it was a goal from Cristiano Ronaldo and made me think about why there's VAR for some things, why there's not for another one. So that before there was none. So it was all about, okay, it was or not was. You could see it on the video after, and it was a human mistake if the assistant referees didn't see it, and then you move on. You couldn't and stay like that. But if we go back now with VAR, there's some tournaments not having it in another ones. Where is the line of because it's unfortunately for some teams, but then you have other tournaments with their VAR. Okay, we got it, and then you can review it, and then you can fix it. So I think that's where it's getting a little bit different, which I think UEFA and obviously the big leagues and everyone around the world. Either we put it everywhere or we don't put anything. For me, it is just because then it becomes why us, why not me, why not us, and then you got all this chaos about when the things happen. So that's just my thought from the weekend. Good matchups as well. I didn't get to see all of them, just the Spain versus Georgia, and it was like I said, European teams that. They're not great in the past, but with this Nations Cup and with this group way of playing now, it gives more and more closer opportunities to what in the past those weak teams used to be, and it was no chance to qualify for anything.
Yeah, I think it was a double whammy, right? It happens on the biggest stage, and it happens to one of the biggest players in the world. So I think that's just an unfortunate occurrence there for UEFA. But yeah, I've also a team I want to mention is I know people regard Belgium in very high esteem. And it was interesting kind of watching their matches this week. A lot of different points. They just didn't seem to be clicking, unfortunately. And also they let in a couple goals versus Wales early on. And then also I think they played the Czech Republic where they didn't come out with the victory. But in that Wales match, they really turned it on and were able to get 3 quick goals and to come from behind there. Ricky, I wanted to bring this issue up because, again, this is close to home and also something that you do with Club Atletico in terms of an issue that's focused. And right now, so far in these UEFA matches, at least I count 3 teams, Norway, Germany, and Netherlands, that before the match, during the pregame ceremony with the national anthems, they've each worn shirts with messages or sayings concerning basically a protest right now of the human rights concerns and problems that are going on in Qatar. Obviously, in 2022, we'll have the World Cup, and as always, it brings a spotlight to that nation. And we saw somewhat of a similar problem with Russia a few years ago, obviously, with how they handle things over there. But this situation has been worse because we know that reports in terms of the working conditions on the stadiums at the World Cup, there's been a number of deaths from employees and other complaints. It's interesting that this early on, it's the European clubs kind of taking this initiative in terms of speaking out during these matches. I just want to get your thoughts on that. As we get closer to this World Cup, how will we deal with what is going on in Qatar in terms of the situation there?
It's every time the World Cup comes around. I know in Brazil was doing it. They built, they call them white elephants, these stadiums that are amazing, and then they don't use them ever again, and there's deaths, there's exploitation, there's trafficking, there's all kinds of things that are happening around the World Cup every time. I know from the human trafficking standpoint, sex trafficking is at its highest during the World Cup. There's a ripple effect and a negative effect every time the World Cup comes around. Everyone knows it, and it gets swept under the rug because everyone loves the game around the world, and that's what's important. That's we even have a show to talk about it. But it is sad and tragic that that does go on, and I think it's great that the pro team, the national teams, are having a voice for them. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, again, two high-profile teams, Germany, Netherlands, and then Erling Haaland, one of the best young players in the world right now, also joining in on this protest. I believe Norway were the first to do it, which is really cool. But yeah, unfortunately, this upcoming World Cup, I think, still represents the old FIFA guard. The problems and how we got here with Sepp Blatter and all of that type of situation. Hopefully this is it, and this you can kind of remove those remnants from it. And then once we get to 2026 with the joint World Cup thing going on here in North America, we can move past this, and World Cup bids will be done honestly in countries that kind of deserve it. This is obviously just a very awkward situation in terms of how we got here to this point. And as we get closer and closer, more and more these stories will come out, and it will just kind of go to show how messed up how we got to this place, how we're going to have the World Cup in Qatar. So good for these teams sticking out. Again, very big platform, and we need to keep the conversation going because we know Qatar aren't going to do anything about it. So, but yeah, very exciting, again, that we've had these first couple of matches now. Again, hopefully South America reschedule their matches. I know they're dealing with the pandemic, unfortunately. CONCACAF have started their first rounds of matchups. Obviously, the bigger countries aren't involved as of yet, but countries like El Salvador are involved. I think, Luis, we talked about Guatemala are involved in the first round of these qualifiers as well. So, again, we'll see how these countries play out and how they move on. And, yeah, again, we'll continue to focus on it. Obviously, during the international break, you got nothing else really to be talking about. Yeah. But, no, again, very exciting stuff right now.
It's good timing from the college coach perspective. Every year there's a 2-year cycle. So you have the qualifying for the World Cup, and then you have the World Cup. And my college teams, going back since 2005, have always been sharper and better quality because all they are doing is watching these games. They're in it. They're excited. This is the whole reason why they play. And I don't know what it is, but their mindset is just at a higher level, and they're ready to absorb, and they want to play at the highest levels. And every time, the level, even our opponents we play against, the level is always higher. Like the young boys, 18, 19-year-old guys, they just then see their guys playing at the top level, and it motivates them. So this is happening now. We're in the last week of our preseason at St. Louis. We play Atletico on Wednesday, actually, a little exhibition. And I'm seeing the benefits for my own players because of the games that are being played right now.
Well, that's really good to hear. Obviously, in terms of as we continue to get closer to the World Cup, it just kind of seems like every competition around the world just means more because guys are trying to get into these teams and find a way, to make themselves known. Some of those guys that are on the fringe that didn't make these initial rosters, they gotta figure it out. And obviously, we'll have a lot of high-profile matches up onto the road till the World Cup. So, again, very excited. It's a good time still for soccer. And obviously, the next couple of weeks we'll have a lot more soccer to discuss with the American seasons coming up. We're very excited about that. We're going to try to get some great guests on the show to talk a little bit about what they'll be doing. And, it's been good. 10 episodes, guys, basically done. It's been a good run so far. We're going to keep on improving the show, keep reaching out, keep talking to great people in the community. Another great segment today, and we're going to keep that up. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Atletico TV. For Luis, for Ricky, I'm Josh, saying have a good week. And again, thank you so much for watching.